There is a curious thing that happens when you begin to understand what consciousness really is. You discover something quite startling, something that every tradition, every sage, every person who has ever looked deeply into the nature of existence has come upon. And that is this: you cannot die. Not because you continue as some ghost or separate soul floating around in the afterlife, but because what you truly are was never born in the first place. You see, death frightens us only so long as we believe we are this separate thing, this isolated consciousness trapped inside a body, with birth on one end and death on the other. But when you investigate deeply, when you really look, you begin to see that this whole notion of being born into the world and then leaving it is based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The misunderstanding is that you came into this world rather than out of it, that you are a stranger here rather than an expression of it. And once you begin to see through this illusion, death loses its terror entirely, not because you escape it, but because you understand what you fundamentally are. Now, this isn't easy to grasp, because we've been educated from birth to think of ourselves as these separate entities who arrived here quite by accident and who will vanish completely when the body gives out. But consciousness, awareness, the sense of being alive, this doesn't come and go the way we imagine. It's the background, the screen, upon which all experiences appear and disappear, and that background never went anywhere. Let's start with something very simple: your breathing. You don't breathe, breathing happens. You don't pump your heart, it beats. You don't digest your food consciously, it all takes care of itself. Now, if these fundamental life processes happen without your deliberate control, then who are you? Are you the doer? Or are you the whole process? When you say I, what are you referring to exactly? Most of us have this feeling, this sensation of being a little man inside our head, looking out through our eyes like windows, operating the body like some kind of vehicle. But when you search for this little man, when you try to find the exact location of you, there's nothing there. There's seeing but no seer. There's hearing but no hearer. There's thinking, but when you look for the thinker, you only find more thoughts. This sense of being a separate self is what creates the fear of death, because if you're a thing, a separate entity, then that thing can be destroyed. But if you're not actually separate, if what you really are is the entire process of life itself, then death is simply one part of that process, no more threatening than going to sleep each night. The wave says, I'm going to die when I crash on the shore. But the wave is not separate from the ocean. The wave is what the ocean is doing, right here, right now. When it subsides, the ocean doesn't die. Consider this carefully. Before you were born, where were you? In some kind of void, some eternal darkness where you did not exist. And after death, will you return to that same darkness? But think about this. What was that darkness before your birth? Was it your darkness? How could it be if you weren't there to experience it? The truth is, you cannot remember a time when you were not conscious. Even in your earliest memories, there's always awareness. You've never experienced unconsciousness, because the moment you're unconscious, there's no you to experience it. So what we call death is really just the same as what we call the time before birth. And did that trouble you? Were you sitting around before 1920 or 1950 or 1990, whenever you were born, worrying about not existing? Of course not. So why should you worry about returning to the same state? The problem is we think of it as returning somewhere, as if we will be there experiencing nothing, but that's a contradiction. Experience and experiencer arise together. They're not separate things. When the experiencing stops, the experiencer stops too, but the source of experience, the possibility of consciousness itself, that continues not as your consciousness, but as consciousness itself. You are not in the universe. You are the universe becoming aware of itself at this particular point. Life is essentially a game of hide and seek that the universe plays with itself. It pretends to be separate individuals, each one believing they are the center of their own private world, looking out at all the other separate things and people. But it's a pretense. It's a cosmic drama where the one being, the one consciousness, plays all the parts. Imagine you're playing all the characters in a drama, but you've convinced yourself so thoroughly of each role that you've forgotten you're acting. You actually believe you're this person. with this history, these memories, these problems. That's magnificent theater, that's the art of it. But every now and then, maybe in a moment of meditation, or in the shock of a close call with death, or in the midst of making love or watching a sunset, suddenly the mask slips and you remember, oh yes, I'm doing all of this, I'm playing all the parts. The fear was part of the play. The suffering was part of the play. The seeking was part of the play. Now when you die, which character dies? The character you were playing, yes, but the actor, the one consciousness that was playing that role, that doesn't go anywhere. It simply takes up another role, or perhaps steps back from the stage entirely. But there's no tragedy in this, because you were never really that character to begin with. You just convinced yourself you were, which is the whole point of the game. Here's another way to look at it. Time is an illusion. Not that events don't happen in sequence, of course they do, but the feeling that you exist in time, moving from past through present into future, that's a trick of memory and anticipation. The only time you ever experience is now. You remember the past, now. You anticipate the future, now. You've never experienced anything except this present moment. So in what sense can you die if you only exist now? Death is always in the future, always about to happen, but never actually happening to the one who's experiencing. When it does happen, there's no one left to experience it. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The very thing you're trying to see is the thing doing the seeing, the very thing you're afraid of losing, that sense of being alive, being aware. That's what you are. You can't lose it because you are it. Now, this doesn't mean the body won't stop functioning. Of course it will. This doesn't mean people won't grieve when you're gone. Of course they will. But the catastrophe we imagine, the annihilation of consciousness, that's based on the mistaken belief that consciousness is produced by the body. It isn't. The body is an appearance in consciousness. When the body goes, your particular perspective goes. But consciousness itself, the background awareness, that's the same in you as it is in me, as it is in every living thing. It never comes or goes. All fear, when you trace it back far enough, is fear of death, fear of annihilation, fear of ceasing to exist. We're afraid of losing our job because we might starve, and that leads to death. We're afraid of rejection because it threatens our social bonds, which in primitive terms meant survival. We're afraid of pain because it signals potential damage, which could lead to death. Everything circles back to that one central terror, that I will cease to be. But once you understand that what you are cannot die because it was never born, this fear begins to dissolve, not through belief, not through hoping for an afterlife, but through direct insight into the nature of consciousness itself. You see that you are not a thing that has consciousness. You are consciousness itself, temporarily identifying with a particular body-mind. And when you see this, really see it not just as an idea, but as a living reality, then death becomes no more frightening than taking off a tight shoe at the end of the day. There's actually a relief in it, a letting go. The body has done its work. The character has played its part. Now it's time to rest. Not the rest of nothingness, but the rest of returning to what you've always been. The ocean receiving the wave back, but the ocean was never separate from the wave to begin with. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you truly understand you cannot die, how do you live? You might think it would make you reckless, careless with life, but the opposite happens. You become more alive and more present, more engaged with the beauty and terror and comedy of existence, because you're not holding back anymore. You're not saving yourself for later, because there is no later, there's only this. You're not defending yourself against inevitable dissolution, because you see that what's dissolving was always temporary anyway. The personality, the body, the story, these were costumes for the dance. And the dance is happening now. You eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired, laugh when something's funny, cry when something's sad, but you're not constantly calculating and worrying and trying to prevent the inevitable. You're free to be completely here, because you're not trying to get anywhere else. Death will come. Of course it will, but you're not living in fear of it anymore, because you understand the secret, the real you, the awareness looking through these eyes that never dies. It simply moves on to the next experience or returns to its source. or continues in ways we can't possibly imagine because we're still playing the game of being separate. But the fear is gone, and with the fear gone, you can finally live. So we arrive at the paradox. The one who is afraid of death doesn't really exist, and the one who really exists cannot die. The ego, the personality, the story of me, yes, that will end. It's already ending moment by moment as you age, as you change, as you forget and remember and become someone slightly different with each passing day. But the witness, the awareness, the consciousness that knows it's alive, that's the immortal part. Not immortal like a thing that lives forever, but immortal like space, like silence. Something that isn't really a thing at all, and therefore can't be destroyed. You see, we've been asking the wrong question all along. We've been asking what happens to me after I die, as if me were a separate entity that continues somewhere. But the right question is, what am I really? And when you answer that honestly, when you look directly at your own consciousness without any concepts or beliefs, you discover something remarkable. You discover that you are not the one who will die. You are the one who watches death happen. You are the space in which life and death both appear. You are the silence in which all sounds arise and fall. You are that which cannot be born and cannot die, because you are not a thing at all. You are the knowing itself, the awareness itself, the consciousness itself, and that is eternal. And then, having understood all this, having seen through the illusion of separation and the impossibility of your own death, you come back to ordinary life. You still pay your bills, you still eat your breakfast, you still worry sometimes about small things, because that's part of being human. But underneath it all, there's a quiet knowing, a deep certainty that this is all a play, a cosmic drama, and you're both the actor and the audience, the one who suffers and the one who watches suffering, the one who dies and the one who cannot die. This doesn't make you cold or detached. If anything, it makes you more compassionate because you see that everyone else is playing the same game. They just don't know it yet. They're terrified of death because they believe they're separate. And your heart goes out to them because you remember what that fear was like. But you can't convince them with words. Each person has to see it for themselves. All you can do is live fully, completely, without holding back. And maybe, just maybe, they'll wonder what you know that they don't. They'll see that you're not afraid, and they'll want to know why. And then perhaps the teaching can happen, not through preaching, but through presence. Through the simple fact of being awake, while surrounded by those who still believe they're in danger. This is the paradox every spiritually awake soul faces. You understand you cannot die, yet you must live as if every moment matters. Because it does. There's something the mystics rarely speak about plainly, and it's this. The understanding that you cannot die doesn't come through belief. It doesn't come through hope. It doesn't come through studying ancient texts or memorizing spiritual formulas. It comes through a very simple, very direct seeing. And this seeing happens in the strangest way. You see, most people think enlightenment is some spectacular event, some cosmic explosion of light and understanding where suddenly everything makes sense. But it's not like that at all. It's more like you've been looking for your glasses while they're sitting on your nose the whole time. The moment you realize this, there's often laughter because the joke is so obvious, so ridiculously simple, that you can't believe you missed it. You cannot die because there's no you there to die in the first place. There's just this awareness, this consciousness, and it's been here all along, completely unchanged, watching everything come and go. The body grows, the body ages, thoughts arise and dissolve, emotions flow through like weather. But this awareness, it just is. It doesn't age, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't accumulate anything. And the strange thing is, you've always known this. Every moment of your life, you've been this awareness, but you were so convinced you were the contents of awareness, the body, the thoughts, the story, that you never noticed what was actually looking. And here's what they don't tell you. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. But life doesn't suddenly become perfect. You don't float around in bliss all day. You still have to pay your bills. You still get hungry. You still feel sadness when someone you love dies. But underneath all of it, there's this quiet knowing, This unshakable certainty that what you are is untouchable, that the drama is just drama, and that even when this body stops, what's looking through these eyes, right? Now we'll simply continue, not as you, but as itself. And so we come to what might be called the ultimate freedom. It's the freedom that comes from understanding that you have nothing to lose, because you never had anything to begin with. You see, all suffering comes from trying to hold on to something, trying to preserve something, trying to make permanent what is by nature temporary. We want to keep our youth, we want to keep our health, we want to keep our loved ones, we want to keep our life, and this desperate grasping, this endless attempt to prevent the inevitable. This is what makes life a struggle. But when you understand that what you are cannot be lost, the grasping stops. Not because you stop caring, but because you stop confusing yourself with the things you were trying to hold on to. You realize, oh, I'm not the wave trying desperately to avoid crashing on the shore. I'm the ocean itself. The wave rises and falls, but the ocean just is. And this understanding brings a freedom that nothing else can touch, because now you can live, really live, without the constant background anxiety of trying to prevent death. You can love without clinging. You can create without needing the creation to last forever. You can give yourself fully to this moment because you're not saving yourself for some imagined future. This is what the spiritual traditions have always pointed to, though they've wrapped it in so many layers of ritual and belief that the simple truth gets lost. The truth is, you are already free. You always have been. The prison was imaginary. The bars were made of thought. And the key has been in your hand the whole time. It's just that you kept looking for some complicated technique, some special practice, some secret teaching that would set you free. But there is no technique, there is no practice, there is only seeing what you are, seeing what has always been here, and in that seeing, the paradox resolves itself. You cannot die, because you were never born. You cannot be destroyed, because you were never created. You are, and that's all. That's the beginning and the end. That's the whole teaching. Everything else is just decoration. So what does it mean to know you cannot die? It means you stop living in the future, in some imagined heaven or hell or next lifetime. It means you stop defending yourself against the inevitable, because you see that what's inevitable isn't the tragedy you imagined. It means you embrace this moment, this breath, this sensation with complete openness, because you understand it's the universe experiencing itself through your particular set of eyes. You are not in the world. You are the world. Temporarily focal point. And when this body gives out, when this particular expression of consciousness comes to an end, the consciousness itself simply continues. Not as you, not as this personality with these memories and preferences, but as the undying awareness that was here before you were born and will be here after you're gone. The wave returns to the ocean, but the ocean never left. This is what the mystics have been trying to tell us for thousands of years, but we keep mishearing it as a promise of personal immortality. It's not that. It's something far more profound. You don't continue as you were never really you to begin with. You were always the whole ocean, pretending to be a wave. And one day the pretending stops, the game ends, and you remember what you always were. That's not death, that's awakening. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to wait until the body dies to wake up. You can see it right now in this very moment. If you're willing to let go of the story, let go of the fear, let go of the desperate clutching at existence, and simply be, just be. And in that being, you'll find you never went anywhere. You were always here, always now, always this.